Welcome to Shack DIY. This is where we do small projects that can save you a ton. Now today we're looking at the suction control valve, or commonly known as the SCV, found in common rail diesel engines. Now let's quickly have a look what the suction control valve does. The suction control valve in the common rail fuel system basically acts as the throttle to the fuel pump, allowing only the required amount of fuel to be pumped through the system into the fuel rail that supplies the fuel to the injectors of a diesel engine. It's basically a piston that moves inside a sleeve with an opening in the center and on the sides, allowing calculated amounts of fuel to pass through. The important factor in the operation of the suction control valve is that it must operate smoothly. Most of the suction control valves are mounted horizontally in engines, and this is where the problem starts. You can imagine that this causes the piston to scour over time on the one side of the piston, as gravity forces causes the piston to be nearer to the bottom side of the sleeve as the top side. When the piston is scoured, the operation cannot be smooth anymore, and common symptoms as engine surging and engine that goes into limp mode arise. The suction control valve we are looking at today is mounted on a Mitsubishi Triton 3.2 diesel. It's also called the L200 or Sportero in other countries. This vehicle has done more than 400,000 kilometers and is still on its original suction control valve. Now, usually a suction control valve lasts about 100 to 150,000 kilometers, according to the experts. The symptoms experienced were that the vehicle started to surge under acceleration and the engine warning light lighted up. Hunting idle speed and surging cruise speed as a good indication of a sticky SCV. So by inserting a common OBD connector to the vehicle in the communications port under the steering wheel and using the dash command app to determine the engine fault code, the code P0089 came up. Now this states that the SCV is stuck or sticky. Attached is a list with some of the engine warning codes on the Mitsubishi for your reference. Now with this diagnosed, you basically have three options. The first option is to buy a replacement SCV. The SCVs supplied by Mitsubishi are quite costly. And an alternative is the Nissan's SCV that also fits on this vehicle and is a bit cheaper, but you can also buy it on Amazon or eBay. The second option is to loosen the SCV and turn it 380 degrees in its current position. Now the rationale behind that is that the piston is usually scoured on the bottom side, and by rotating the SCV, the top side that is not damaged is now at the bottom and could solve the problem, but I suggest that this should act as a temporary solution only. And then the third option is to refurbish the SCV, and that is what we are going to do today. This will only cost you some time, and most of the materials needed should be in your shack where you do your DIY projects. Now you'll need the following. You'll need spanners to remove your battery, a number 5 Allen key, a small circular plier, 1500 grit sandpaper, and a bit of polishing compound, a drill, and a bit to polish the inside of the cylinder of the SUV. Now let's go inside the vehicle and have a look where the SUV is situated and how to refurbish it. First, you have to remove the battery from the vehicle to gain access to the SUV. An alternative is to gain access from the front left wheel So if you take off the wheel, you'll see the SUV sits basically right in front of you. Both options will work. Then the electrical wire needs to be removed from the SUV. You will then have to loosen the 2 Allen bolts that secures the SUV. Then the 2 Allen bolts that secures the SUV need to be removed. And just a tip, I use a magnet to ensure that the loosened bolts don't fall into the engine bay. It is a pain to fish around in the engine bay for a bolt that fell into it. So rather prevent it from falling in. After this, the SUV can be pulled out. Then the SUV has to be disassembled by removing the circlip on the front end. The piston can now be removed from the sleeve of the SUV. On inspection of the piston, you will now notice that the one side of the piston is usually scoured or dull, and the other side will be shiny. Obviously, the bottom side will be the dull side. To polish the piston, cover the one side of the piston with a fair amount of plumber's tape. Then fasten the SUV into the chuck of a drill. Don't over tighten it, as it may damage the surface of the piston. You only need to fasten it lightly so that the drill chuck can turn and you can polish the surfaces. Use a piece of fine sandpaper with polishing compound to polish the surface of the piston. Remove the piston then from the drill and the plumber's tape, and then redo the other side of the piston to give a smooth and shiny surface. Now, you use a bit that usually is found in toolkits of Dremel to polish the inside of the sleeve, where the piston has to slide into. Here you'll also need to dampen the bit with a bit of polishing compound. After this polishing is done, when inspecting the inside of the sleeve, it also has to have a nice and shiny surface. After this, clean all the components from any dirt and then install the spring and then the piston back into the sleeve of the suction control valve and secure the circlip. And fit the suction control valve back into the vehicle, and remember to fit the gasket and the O-ring as well. And fasten the 2 Allen bolts. After that, fit the electrical connector plug and fit the battery back into the vehicle. Now this operation should give you at least another 100,000 trouble-free kilometers. Enjoy, and if you like this, please subscribe.